Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. We're going to talk more about Star Wars, the sequel trilogy. We're going to talk about Galaxy's Edge and why Disney seems to be banking so heavily on sequel-era characters when they've proven to be relatively unpopular compared to the original trilogy. Why they built Galaxy's Edge, themed it to the sequel trilogy when everybody wanted to see Darth Vader and C-3PO and R2-D2 and Han Solo and all these other classic characters, but they're nowhere to be found. They're nowhere to be found. So this, I want to preface this by saying this is a rumor, and I'm not sure I believe this rumor. It is what it is. It actually reportedly made its way to YouTubers via people with connections at the Walt Disney Company, with connections at Lucasfilm. I cannot verify whether or not these rumors are true, but they're making the rounds. I actually held off on covering this for a couple days because I'm like, I don't know, this sounds kind of sketchy. So the rumor is that George Lucas actually gets a pretty hefty cut from merchandise sales, theme park tickets, whatever associated with classic Star Wars characters, whereas Disney gets everything from characters they created. So every time a Darth Vader action figure gets sold, George Lucas gets some money. But if a Rey action figure gets sold, or a Rose Tico action figure gets sold, if that ever actually happens, George Lucas does not get money. See how that works? And Disney is all about maximizing profits, and they don't like to share. So the rumor is that this is why they're making some of the decisions that they're making, some of the really, really dumb business decisions that they're making, trying to push new Disney Star Wars over the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, the characters that George Lucas actually created. So let's go down the rabbit hole. If you guys haven't subscribed already, please do so. It helps the channel out immensely. We just passed 50,000 subs. Thank you so much. I think we're probably going to do a celebratory live stream. We haven't done a live stream in several weeks now, and I think we probably will do some kind of a live stream, so stay tuned for details on that. But let's go back to this. So this is coming from Bounding in the Comics. We'll talk about where the rumor originated and whether or not it actually has any merit. I'm really on the fence about this one. And this is coming from a guy who used to run a theme park blog. Myself and my wife, Geeky, used to run a theme park blog. We've actually worked in and around Disney people for quite some time. And I don't know what to make of this, because it could be true. It could be true because some of these deals are pretty nebulous. They're pretty murky. Disney does not broadcast the specifics of most of its deals like this. This was a huge deal. And George Lucas is a very, very shrewd businessman. We'll talk about that and why he might have actually put that clause in his contract. Because he actually, I feel, sold Star Wars for much less money than it was actually worth long term. And he might have been aware of that. So here we go. From Bounding in the Comics, rumor, Disney killing off iconic Star Wars characters because George Lucas still financially attached. A new rumor indicates that Disney is killing off the original trilogy Star Wars characters because George Lucas still receives financial compensation for the use of the original trilogy and prequel trilogy characters, the characters he created. This rumor comes from YouTuber Doomcock, who also put the rumor out there about Doctor Who and Chibnall leaving, splitting acrimoniously with the BBC, and the BBC's kind of keeping it on the down low. We don't know what's going on with that one either. So here we go. He states, Disney did not purchase the rights to Star Wars outright, lock, stock, and barrel. George Lucas still retains some kind of financial attachment to the original characters. That is why they are being systematically destroyed, discarded, bent, folded, spindled, and mutilated in order to promote the Disney original sequel characters over the George Lucas characters, which are somehow encumbered. This might actually be true or partially true, and we'll talk about how George Lucas managed to maintain control over Star Wars merchandising rights as long as he has. So Doomcock continues, it's a rumor that potentially explains so very, very much about Disney's otherwise inexplicable behavior and treatment of the Star Wars franchise. Yeah, you've got money in the bank. Money in the bank, and they burned it. They burned it. With the sequel trilogy, they killed off the characters that everybody cared about, or marginalized them. They based a massive theme park expansion on the sequel era, which nobody cares about. They just keep pushing their new and improved Star Wars, and nobody wants it. The old fans don't want it. The kids don't want it. We talked in a video earlier this week about how kids, they're not flocking to Star Wars like their parents did. They've got a million other things to be interested in, and Star Wars is not one of them. So Star Wars needs to beat that nostalgia drum, and they're not doing it. Doomcock adds, my source with ties to Lucasfilm claims that Lucas gets a 25% royalty on any elements of the original trilogy that Disney uses. That's why Disney is trying to kill off the original trilogy. That's why they're not using any of the original characters in the theme park, because of the lousy 25%. If the rumor is true, then why buy Star Wars? Why buy Star Wars if you can't use the characters? So Nerdrotic actually chimed in, and I was watching his video earlier, and I want to point out here, I don't want to snipe anybody else's videos, so please go out and watch the original videos, Doomcock's video and Nerdrotic's video. I'll put a link to those in the description. Apparently, both of those gentlemen got the information from, I don't know if it's the same source, but they had people come to them behind the scenes. Now, you're going to be like, okay, why would anybody go to a YouTuber? Why would they go to a YouTuber instead of someone in the media with this information? Why would you go to the media? They're in the back pocket of most of these studios, for one thing. And for another, we have people come to us all the time with information. We don't broadcast a lot of it, but, you know, once you gain a following on YouTube, yeah, people do. You'd be surprised at people who watch the channels. You know, you'd be surprised. And absolutely, if you're doing a lot of videos about Doctor Who, or a lot of videos about Star Wars, or the animation industry, or whatever it is, you're going to probably attract people from those industries, especially if the videos get a lot of views. And yeah, sometimes they'll slip you some information. We've had it happen ourselves. So it's very possible that they did, in fact, get information from an anonymous source. So this is what Nerdrotic said. I know why they could not use the originals as the base for the sequel trilogy. This is the person who came to Nerdrotic. I need to clarify here in looks like a private message. They didn't buy them. Lucas still owns the originals, and they only license those characters from him. The source states the implication of this is huge, and that's because this is why Disney has not put out a despecialized edition of the original trilogy, and has been trying to kill off original characters. Well, Disney, you know, we always assumed it was a Fox issue, and Disney bought Fox, and now, you know, they technically could bring out the despecialized editions of Star Wars. I thought they were, and I thought there was a rumor they were bringing out the holiday special too. They might be, who knows. So Gary from Nerdrotic says, I think that George Lucas owns a piece, or has the right to a percentage of any profits from the older stuff. That part I think is true. Now, whether or not that's actually the driving force behind Disney's stupid decision to bank so heavily on the sequel trilogy that nobody gives a shit about, that's a whole nother issue. But George is a smart man. George Lucas is a very smart man. So how did George get so rich? It wasn't just off the box office for Star Wars. Now, Star Wars fans know the story. George Lucas had 20th Century Fox distribute the original Star Wars, and he took less, as I understand it, I need to look into this a little bit more, but he did take, I believe, less of a fee, or less of a cut from Fox, as long as he got to retain the merchandising rights. Fox was probably like, there's no way in hell these robots and whatever are going to make good merchandise. This movie's going to flop. We don't give a shit. Sure, you can have the merchandising rights. George, sure. Pat, man, we screwed that guy over. No, George had the last laugh. Now, this is coming from Business Insider. George Lucas gave up control of the franchise in 2012. He still made a tremendous profit off of it. That's not just because he created the original story. Lucas gained control of licensing and merchandising rights before A New Hope was even released. This smart move ultimately turned him into one of the most successful people in the entertainment industry. George Lucas went and made Star Wars figures. Well, actually, Kenner made Star Wars figures after Mego passed, I think. Mego was, they made a lot of dolls back in the day. I believe they passed. Kenner which back then was a very small company, made cajillions of dollars off of Star Wars action figures, and George got a cut every time you bought one because he's a smart businessman. He knew he had something. He knew he had something. So, is it possible? Is it possible that he had a similar deal with Disney where he said, sure, I'll sell you Star Wars, I'll sell you everything, just any of the characters that you use I created, I still get a cut, and Disney, chomping at the bit to get their hands on Star Wars, might have agreed to it. They might have agreed to it. They might have been like, yeah, sure, 75% is better than nothing. So we'll absolutely do that. And then they went and just kind of threw out everything George wanted to do with Star Wars, replaced his original characters with new characters. I mean, we've got BB-8 basically replacing R2. R2-D2 is nowhere to be found in Galaxy's Edge. From my understanding, Chewie's there, but he's the sequel version of Chewie. It's a mess. It's a mess. This is not the Star Wars people wanted to see. It's not the Star Wars they remember. So yeah, I think it's possible. I'm not saying it's true, but George Lucas is a very smart guy. I could see him doing this. Because, to be honest, I remember Samuel L. Jackson when he sold Star Wars. When George Lucas sold Star Wars, Samuel L. Jackson came out and said that he thought George Lucas got robbed because Disney was going to make that $4 billion back on just a couple of movies. Now they owned it forever. And George is probably looking at that like, yeah, you know what? Long term, Star Wars with Disney might be worth a hell of a lot more money than what I'm selling it for, so I get a cut. Never imagining that Disney would actually use that to destroy the franchise, if it's true. Disney would be like, no, we got Star Wars now, sure, shut the old man up, give him his money, we're gonna make all new, all different Star Wars, and people are gonna love it because it's Star Wars. So I think it's very possible. I don't know if that's the driving force behind the really stupid decisions in Galaxy's Edge or not, and the stupid decisions to basically, destroy the original characters one by one. But, again, Disney, why give somebody 25%? If your own arrogance tells you to just do it your way, we've seen how that's worked out for them. Do it your way, and you don't have to give the old man anything. And that might actually explain some of the bad blood between George Lucas and Disney at the beginning. It might have been that, they were just like, well, let's throw all of this out because if we base the sequels on the outline that George gave us, he gets a cut. If we create all these new characters wholesale, we don't have to pay him a damn thing. So we're going to create Rey and BB-8 to replace R2-D2 and Kylo Ren to replace Vader, and George doesn't get anything. And unfortunately, that's not what people wanted. That's not what people wanted. So, I was trying to find something somewhere that might prove, this to be true. And I can't. Disney is very tight-lipped with the details of their contracts. I do remember when it was announced that George Lucas got some kind of additional compensation, whether it was royalties or stock. He did get a 2% stake in Disney. He did, I guess, start selling that off early on. So he might have figured, I don't know, maybe Disney wasn't a good bet. I don't know. I can't find anything to substantiate this. I don't know anybody at Lucasfilm that would know the details of that. And even if they did, if they're currently working for Disney or Lucasfilm, they're not going to tell me. So, I can't vouch, but this is a rumor. But you know what? Sometimes these deals are very, very murky. I know in comics, in Disney comics, the way it works is, it's pretty much a character by character license. I've worked on a number of Disney comics, Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Uncle Scrooge. And, Disney sort of, when they license stuff out, they sort of piecemeal it. Like the characters come in groups. Like you will have the standard characters, which are like Mickey Mouse, Pluto, Minnie Mouse, whatever. They're one group. And you also have like the Duck group, which would be like Scrooge McDuck and Donald Duck, etc. But if you want to do a comic book about DuckTales, that's actually a totally different license because, some of the characters were created specifically for the DuckTales show, and they're not covered by the comic book version, the license for the characters creating the comic. So again, this is very normal with IP. And there could be a master list out there of elements and characters that belong to George, technically, or that George gets a cut from merchandise sales of, which is why Disney's trying so hard to bury these characters. We can't have all the kids just wanting a Luke Skywalker action figure, because if they're buying Luke, they're not buying Rey, they're not buying Kylo, they're sure as hell not buying Rose Tico. So we gotta give, you know, George a couple of bucks every time we sell one of these overpriced Black Series figures. You know, so it's possible. It is very possible. I'm not saying it's true. It is just a rumor. But it's a very interesting theory if it turns out to be true. We'll probably never know. Unless, you know, George comes out and flat out says something in a fit of rage, which is very possible. You know, George has a tendency to voice his opinions from time to time. But if the theory is true, that would kind of be the unified theory of everything, wouldn't it? As to why Disney has made such poor decisions in regards to Star Wars. They're basically trying to replace the original characters so they can make more money and maximize profits. And it blew up spectacularly because the movies aren't doing so hot. I don't think Episode 9 is going to be phenomenal. I think it'll do pretty good. I don't think it's going to be a massive $2 billion box office hit, but it's probably going to break $1 billion. It'll probably do okay, but the merchandise isn't selling. The theme park is a dud. You know, so it's very short-sighted of Disney, if this was the case, to exclude classic characters, you know, going forward. So we'll see. I mean, we'll probably never know. But it's a very interesting theory. It is just a rumor. Again, I will put links to the videos that originated that rumor, and I cannot substantiate any of it. Sorry. So please subscribe to Clownfish TV for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We do mostly views, mostly rants, and we try to bring you news or news that we think is worth talking about in the geekosphere. So we'll talk to you guys later. Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.